Good morning, good morning. Lots of blooms on that. It's early in the morning. I'm out checking on my plants. We've been so hot the last few days. The last week or so we've been so hot. Our temperatures are reaching in the hundreds, and they're telling us that we're going to get ready for a heat wave. Alabama weather. Anybody who's lived down here for any length of time is used to the temperatures. We haven't had rain for about 72 hours, but before that we had it for 7 days in a row. Really high temperatures and heavy rain late in the evening. Plants got flushed and watered and flushed and watered and flushed, and they got fed and fed and fed and fed. Every time it rains or every time I water, I'm feeding. Every single time. Over a period of 7 days, I think they got fed maybe 9 or 10 times. I was feeding it a couple of days. I probably fed twice a day because they were getting rained on so much. But they're getting flushed at the same time, remember. Flushed and flushed and flushed. So I'm just replacing what nutrients are getting washed away. And if you think about it, an orchid on a tree in the wild, does it have any control of the nutrients that come down? Does it have any control of the amount of nutrients or the type of nutrients that come down? No, not at all. It would get nutrients with every single rain. Orchids don't have the ability to stop the nutrients flowing to them. They can't say, well, I just would like fresh water for a couple of times and just give me some nutrients every week, once a week or every 10 days. Every single time it rains, they get nutrients. Tiny amounts of nutrients, but all the time. Even in a dormant period, there would be some nutrients coming down the tree. There might be less nutrients than you'd get during other times of the year, but they would always be getting some nutrients. And so I'm just trying to duplicate, because I'm in an enclosed environment here, I'm just trying to duplicate what Mother Nature would be doing. So I'm putting a little bit of nutrients on them every single time it rains. And with the amount of growth that I have, every one of these plants has got big growths on it. There's growths on every single plant. New shoots, double shoots. This one's got triple shoots coming up. Double growths, triple growths on the cherry baby. Big flower spike. Look at the flower spike sticking up 3 feet tall here. Alright. We're in high temperatures. Lots and lots of growth. It's active. Plants are growing this time of year. I don't want my plants to stall or to stop growing. I'd want them to keep growing and keep growing and keep growing, so I'm keeping up with their hydration. If you don't keep up with the hydration on them and keep up with the nutrients that allow them to hydrate and help them hydrate, your plants can have issues or be seriously stressed or hurt during these high heat times. They would be exposed to temperatures like this in their native countries and their native habitats. Maybe not quite these extremes in some of them, but quite a bit still. And I'm just watching chipmunks in the background here popping up. Something else I've done is I moved all the phals over here. They're all hanging up underneath the shelving. They're getting filtered light through the rest of the plants and through the shelving. I've got the rest of the big ones. They're all sitting down here. They're getting lots and lots of extra light now. You can see it filtering through early in the morning even. And then in the afternoon they're getting quite a bit of strong light too. But I've noticed tons of growth on all of them. Every one of them has leaves and spikes coming out. Really changing the way the plants are growing, I think. Big flower spikes. Lots of branching too. I've noticed lots and lots of branching on the flower spikes. Very happy about that. So my biggest issue right now is not so much the heat, not watering, is keeping up with the nutrients, because they're growing so strong and they've got such big growths right now. I'm just pouring nutrients to them. I'm feeding somewhere in the neighborhood of 175 to 180 parts per million, and I'm like I said, I'm just feeding all the time, but they're getting flushed quite a bit. No residual. The plants will stay wet. The rock, the media, the roots, the whole thing as a unit will stay wet for several days. They'll hydrate from it for several days, and then it takes several days to dry out, and then they have a dry period for several more days. So they're getting a wet dry cycle of every 4 or 5 days if it's not raining. Now if it's raining, they're getting watered on all the time. They're gonna get fed all the time. Again, I'm just mimicking Mother Nature. Their color is becoming a nice even green. All the little shades of purple and red are disappearing. All the yellowing's disappearing. Plants are just getting thick, fat, growing, big new shoots. Seems like every plant has new shoots. You know, one of the things I did a month ago, and I spoke about it in a video, and there was a reason for it. I started adding, I've always used kelp and seaweed. I love that product. It provides not just and some additional potassium, but it provides lots of vitamins, amino acids, enzymes, hormones, things of that nature, all which are, you know, we talk about nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, and calcium, and things like that. That's kind of the meat and potatoes. That's what makes the plants grow. But the stuff that controls the plant, tells the plant what to do and when to do it and how to do it, that's the control part. That's where all the vitamins and hormones and enzymes and things like that come into play. And seaweed and kelp supplements are full of those things, which help the plant. And they would get those things in the wild. They wouldn't just get nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium and calcium coming down the trees. They would get all these vitamins and enzymes and hormones and other types of things that would be released from other animals or other fauna or insects or fruit or leaves or other types of things growing or working or living among the trees, and it would all be flushed down to the plants. And I'm just, again, trying to duplicate what they would get in Mother Nature. That extra potassium that I've been adding, though, does a couple of things. You know, I spoke about this before, and you think about that odontocitium right there with that 36-inch spike coming up. It's giving off moisture all day long. There's moisture. Water is evaporating from that spike all day long, as are all these big leaves. Everything sticking up in the air is moisture is being pulled away from the wind, from the breeze outside, from the heat. It's evaporating into the environment, right? And that plant has to replace that all day long. It's pumping water up that spike, pumping water up that spike, pumping water up the spike. How do they do that? I spoke about that in a video before. I'm reminding you now because of how hot it is outside. I started adding potassium for a reason. A plant will take potassium ions. You see these little spaces on the shelf? It's like the cell structure in a leaf or in a spike, in a bulb, cane, and it will take potassium ions and pump them to the next cell. Potassium ions and pump them to the next cell, and pump them to the next cell, and pump them to the next cell. The potassium ions will cause the cell to almost become like a salty, and it'll draw moisture to it. It'll pump ions and draw moisture, pump ions and draw moisture, pump ions and draw moisture, and that's how it moves fluid through the plant all day long, all night long, 24 hours a day. So how much potassium do you think that plant needs? You know, if there's one thing we found out when we were talking about calcium for the last several months, is that most of our mixes either don't contain enough calcium or none at all. I think everybody would agree with that. So if you think about it again, what makes you think that the N, P, and K values of that nutrient mix are also going to be adequate? The calcium wasn't. We had to add supplement calcium. It stands to reason that all the nutrients in there are going to be close to what we need, but not exactly what we need. The mixes are not designed specifically for what we're looking for. They're close, but not exact. We have to supplement. You have to with the calcium. Why would you not with nitrogen, potassium, or phosphorus? Of course you would. I'm giving my plants extra potassium so they can hydrate, especially during these high heat conditions. That's why I started a month ago. So get the reserves full. Make sure they got plenty of potassium. Phalaenopsis, which don't have bulbs or canes, they only have leaves. They don't have any type of serious reserves. Every time they grow a new spike or start growing a new leaf, they need the potassium from somewhere. And if they're not finding extra potassium in their environment, and we're the environment, remember we're playing the role of Mother Nature here, so they have to get it from us. So if they don't find enough potassium, they drop a lower leaf. Very, very common. And research has shown that. I'm upping the potassium on mine so I don't lose lower leaves and so I don't drop flower spikes. I don't want them to recycle their potassium. I want them to hold on to it right now. And I want to keep giving them extra potassium. I'm doing that so they can hydrate better. So at this time of year they have extra in the reserves. That's why I pumped them up a month ago, because I knew we were heading into warmer temperatures, higher heat. And we're just starting to get into July. July is going to be very, very hot, and August even hotter. So they still have a lot of growing to do. And again, I'm trying to get ready for that bloom season. Again, research has shown, and I'll talk about that some other time, but research has shown that phosphorus and potassium doesn't do anything for bloom. Nitrogen is what carries plants through the bloom cycle. Plants that have their nitrogen shut off early or hesitant during the growing season do not flower as well in the bloom. Again, I'm just going by what I find in research and what's been helping me grow. Beautiful, beautiful growth. Spikes everywhere. Color is getting better and better and better every day, it seems like. Like I said, I'm feeding about 175 to 180 parts per million of CalMag, Better Grow, and some kelp and seaweed. The kelp and seaweed I'm adding probably every other time I water, at least. Not every single time, but at least every other time. And it's low doses of potassium. It's 001 on the label, so it's not a strong potassium source, but it is adding tiny little bits of extra potassium around the plant so they can absorb it also in their environment. And they're getting watered and watered and watered and flushed and flushed and flushed so much that adding that extra potassium this time of year is not hurting at all. It's helping them hydrate. Magnesium and potassium are the two most important minerals for hydration. I'm giving 10% magnesium with my garden lime, and I'm also spraying some Epsom salts out here. I'm just wanting to up my potassium levels while it's really, really hot now by adding that kelp and seaweed. That's also adding a lot of vitamins and minerals, vitamins and enzymes, hormones, things like that are making a big difference in how the plants are growing also. Just keep that in mind. Anyway, I started preparing them for the intense heat a month ago, and it's paid off big time. I hope everybody's done the same. They're not struggling at all. They're just growing like crazy. Growing like mad. Big, thick leaves, lots and lots of growth. Extra spikes popping out. Dendrobium Chan-Chow, it's got flower spikes I've noticed popping out on the top of it, several of them. The Banfield-Air, or the Odontocedium, this is also CTNA Why Not. I notice it's putting up a bloom spike. Very, very happy with that one too. Just a bunch of work, just a bunch of stuff coming on, just a bunch. Lots and lots of roots. Growing, growing, growing. The Cymbidium, couldn't remember what you call them for a moment there. Cymbidium got repotted also. There was still a lot of bark and moss and potting mix and cocoa and all kinds of other stuff down inside that pot. I cleaned it all out and I put it in this big clay pot so I can control the moisture on it. And it's in full rock now, just nothing but gravel and pea gravel. And I can pump the nutrients to it. I've been feeding it around 225, 250 parts per million. Some additional magnesium, some calcium spread on the pot as well. And I'm just pumping it full of nutrients right now. And excuse me. I've noticed growth already coming out, new color, and big shoots popping out down below. So let's keep an eye on it and see how it does also. But it seems to be growing and filling in the pot. Hopefully it'll do much, much better between now and winter. Get ready for some blooms. Well, I'm going to go get a cup of hot coffee and come sit down, relax, take a look at some of my orchids, enjoy my morning, see if I can coax the dogs outside here maybe for a walk in a little bit. I'm sure I can. Enjoy your day, everybody. Thank you for all the great questions and all the kind words. It means the world to me. Thank you so very, very much. They're growing strong. They're growing hard right now. So all I'm doing is just trying to keep up with all the nutrients. I am pouring the nutrients to them. Like I said before, the 180 parts per million is probably about 60 to 70 parts per million of that is CalMag, and then the rest is Better Grow, except for about the last 20, 25 parts per million is the kelp or seaweed. The kelp and seaweed won't add a lot to parts per million to your mix. I use about a half a teaspoon per gallon of kelp and seaweed. You can use up to a teaspoon, won't hurt. 5 milliliters is a teaspoon per gallon, won't hurt at all. It won't really raise the parts per million that much, maybe 15 to 20 parts per million. It will drop the pH a couple of points, so it is great for dropping the pH if you have a little bit more alkaline water and you want to lower the pH a little bit more. So I just mix mine and it'll drop the pH down into the low 6s and stuff like that with the additional kelp and seaweed. It doesn't hurt it a bit, but I'm feeding low amounts. Alright, and I'm just spraying them out here. Now when they get rained on, they get saturated and they get soaked. I mean, even if it's a tiny little, just a little sprinkle, if I stood out here with my watering can for 10 minutes on a plant, you can imagine how much water it would get on it, right? Well, I'm not doing that. I can't do that. I can't keep the water going for 10 minutes out of my watering can, but I can let the plant sit and soak for 10 minutes or 20 minutes in a container full of water so it has time to soak up like it would in a rainstorm. Just spraying water, and pardon me for saying this, I don't want to get people upset at me, spritzing or misting plants, I don't ever do that. I don't ever do that, and everybody can grow the way they want to. When I give them water, I saturate them. I soak them to the bone. I make sure that the pot and everything is completely saturated. They not only get flushed during that, but they also get hydrated fully. Not just a little bit, fully hydrated. I keep them 100% hydrated all the time. So whenever I give them water, it's not just something to get them by, it's to fully hydrate them. That's so important. Saturate them completely. A little water here and there is just makes it worse. They will slowly get dehydrated. You give them a little bit of water, they get more dehydrated. You give them a little bit of water again, they get more dehydrated. By the time you've done that 3 or 4 times, your plant's very dehydrated. Hope that makes sense. And they wouldn't get that in nature. When they get water, they would get enough to soak them good. Now I realize they get dew and mist and stuff off the trees and off the mountains and flow down and stuff, but that doesn't actually water them. That doesn't do anything in 100-degree heat. So if you're going to water them, water them. Now outside I can spray. Inside I don't spray inside my grow room or anything like that because I don't want salts to accumulate. So outside I spray too. I also let them sit and soak, but I spray them. But if I am going to spray them, I spray them so much that they are saturated. I soak them completely. I want the entire unit, pot, roots, media, etc., to get saturated and act as one big kind of unit. Keep the plant hydrated and feeding for days. Alright, just a quick update on what's going on and what I'm doing differently and how they're doing. They're doing absolutely beautiful. Growing. New growths have gotten really large. New growths. More new ones coming out. Plants are responding. Look at that cane that's growing. That was just a couple inches big. That was just about the same size as the other one a few days ago. Look at the size of it now. 8 inches, 10 inches tall already. Again, have a wonderful day, everybody. I think I'm going to go eat my coffee now and come sit and relax. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Get out there and work in your garden.